Alarming hate crime-related numbers released this week by Toronto Police. Chief Myron Demkew says his officers have responded to more than 1,500 suspected hate crime calls since the Israel-Hamas war began last October. The chief also noting that 138 people have been arrested, 314 charges have been laid within that time frame. To discuss more on this disturbing trend, I'm joined now by Toronto Councillor James Pasternak. Thank you so much for coming in.
Good to be here.
Just last night, there was a solidarity event because this is quite disturbing, the escalation that we are seeing here in the city of Toronto.
It is not the city that we know. The growing hate is now morphed into arson and vandalism. It started with hateful chants and incitement on our streets, and now it's spreading to targeting faith-based institutions, such as faith-based schools and places of worship.
When you see these numbers, I saw you nodding as I was referring to some of the numbers. And when we look at the increase, an increase of 55% of hate crimes over the last year, but 45% of them being anti-Semitic. How troubling is this? Yeah,
so it has been brewing for some time. We saw it coming years ago, where for some illogical reason, the Jewish community in Toronto is being targeted for a world conflict zone 10,000 kilometers away. And this is something that we saw during the pandemic, targeting the Asian community, and we've seen it in anti-black racism. And it is a dark cloud over the city of Toronto, something we must respond to with force and unanimity.
Mayor Olivia Chow, just in a news conference this morning, commented about the recent hate crime occurrences. Here's one of her clips.
We need to stand together with the Jewish community to say no to hate, to anti-Semitism and intimidations. And no one should be targeted because of their faith. And we need to stand together.
Okay, so the message from Mayor Chow was we need to stand together and no one should be targeted for their faith, for their religion. The UJA releasing a statement yesterday urging for immediate and sustained deployment of resources in cities like Toronto, in York Region, where we have seen some of these disturbing incidents, but also for an increase in funding from the city and the province. So what can be done, Councillor?
Yeah, well, first of all, you need a complete overhaul, legislative and statutory overhaul of our hate laws, our criminal code, and our various provisions and statutes so that police can actively go after people who are committing these crimes or inciting them. So you need a complete overhaul of that piece. Secondly, you need a major funding piece so that vulnerable institutions, such as faith-based schools or places of worship, can put in the security infrastructure to keep them safe as a deterrent, as well as catching the perpetrators when a crime is committed. So it doesn't come free, but this city needs help from the other levels of government, both federal and provincial, and there are programs to put in security systems and other security measures to keep those institutions safe.
As noted, this overhaul, the legislation, the funding, none of this happens overnight. Is there anything that can be done immediately?
Well, clearly we have tools at our disposal to act against some of the incitement that's going on our streets. For months we've been hearing about chants for the destruction of Israel, for the genocide of Jews. This is completely unacceptable. These are not charter-protected gatherings. Many of them are simply hate rallies. And we must have the tools to clamp down on them. You know, look, people hide behind the charter, but the charter's for peaceful assembly, not what we're seeing on the streets.
Councillor, what kind of conversations are happening behind closed doors between City Council, Mayor's office, and police, both Toronto, York Regional, about how to tackle all of this? Because on paper, there are a lot of things that can be done, but what would be effective, that is the question, and if this will actually temper any moods or attitudes. So what do those conversations look like between enforcement and local officials? Yeah,
so, I mean, Toronto Police Services have done the best they can. Just a few years ago, they had a hate crime unit of maybe 8 people. Now they're up to 32. Chief Demkew has done the best he can with limited resources. We have a very small police force of about 5,100 sworn officers for a city of 3 million. To give you a comparison, Chicago has the same population with about 12,000 officers. And while it's not exactly the same kind of crime dynamic, we have a very thin force that's doing the best we can. I should point out that to manage these various protests since October 7th has cost upwards of $15 or $16 million in police services. So we need to give police the tools they have of boots on the ground. We need to change the legislative environment, and we need to help fund security systems and security protocols for vulnerable institutions.
I assume this is a top of mind on a long list on the agenda at City Council.
We are constantly talking with other levels of government to partner with us. You're right, statutory changes to criminal code, they do not happen overnight. Unfortunately, they take a while because there's a whole process. At the same time, everyone's going through their budgetary process now, and we'll be adopting our 2025 budget, police services, and the City of Toronto early in the new year. And we hope police services get the resources they need to tackle this scourge in our city.
Councillor James Pasternak, appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
No, you're very welcome.